What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over what I think is the best loadout currently in Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 4.0 build. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, comment down below what your favorite loadout has been so far this season, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So I think this season, as far as meta goes, and as far as loadouts go, is incredibly wide open. We don't really have an absolutely dominant AR or shotgun in the loot pool this season. And then also, typically, as far as mobility goes, there's usually one clear-cut, like, best option. Last season, it was the gloves that we had in the loot pool, the 7 gloves. We don't have anything like that this season. We do have solid items, but I feel like there's not any one thing that's just absolutely, definitively the best in slot. And that makes a lot of this just come down to your own preferences, your own playstyle. And you have a lot of freedom to kind of choose the items you want to use that fit your playstyle best. I think there are 2 potential like best loadouts though, and it's going to be mainly dependent on whether or not you want to use 2 weapons or 3 weapons, which this season being quite open in terms of loot pool, I feel like also makes running 3 weapons a lot more viable than it has been in most recent seasons. So if you plan on only using 2 guns, you're going to start with your choice of shotgun. I made a video about the shotguns a few days ago, talking about the stats on them, going more in depth and saying which ones I think is best, or kind of what the strengths and weaknesses of each are. In short, I think the striker pump has the highest ceiling. The damage on this is actually incredibly good. People say it's a very weak or inconsistent shotgun, but the damage potential is insane. The gold has a max damage of 201, the mythic has a max damage of 230, and even the lower rarities can hit very hard if you get a solid headshot, but you need a good headshot to get good damage out of the striker pump. So it is a lot less forgiving than most of the pump shotguns that we have had in recent Fortnite seasons. The extending focus shotgun is actually incredibly good, and then the Maven is solid as well. If I currently had to rank the shotguns, I think I would rank it striker pump, extending focus, and then Maven last. But as I said, they're all pretty good, and it mostly will just come down to preference or playstyle. When we have all these items that are like comparable enough, it really just comes down to the one you like best is probably going to be the one that you perform best with. And then the same is going to be somewhat true of your spray weapon. Again, if you're only using 2 weapons, you want something that's pretty versatile in this slot, something that can be a complementary spray weapon, especially if you're using the striker pump, but also something that can do medium range and maybe even long range decently well. And I think the best choice for this in the current loot pool is going to be the Ranger pistol, which probably isn't a surprise to you at all if you've been playing this season. I think the Ranger pistol is one of the most powerful or most effective weapons in the loot pool right now. And so this is likely going to be the best spray weapon, regardless of which setup you're going to use. But if you don't really like the Ranger pistol for whatever reason, I think the Warforged AR can also be a kind of solid do-it-all weapon where you have close, medium, and long range somewhat covered in that weapon. Bloom will be more of a factor at long range with the Warforged AR than it will be with the Ranger pistol, but the trade-off is you get better damage at range and a better magazine. As far as the SMGs go, the Flex SMG was an incredible kind of do-it-all weapon towards the end of Chapter 7 Season 1. But this season, it feels like the range on it is a lot worse than it was before. On paper, it didn't look like it got nerfed that hard coming into the season. But I have like a much lower opinion of the Flex now than I did in Chapter 7 Season 1. So I was, going into this season when I saw the loot pool, expecting to run like Pump and Flex SMG. But in practice, the range on it feels quite bad, which you could say just don't take ranged fights with it. And sure, that, the way you play the game and the fights you decide to take need to kind of be dependent on the range of the items you're using. But this will be a really big problem whenever enemies kind of shockwave away or overdrive away. Whenever I'm using the Flex SMG instead of the Ranger pistol, I feel like people have a much easier time just like getting away from me. So for that reason, mainly the range, I think the Ranger pistol is the best spray weapon this season. It has very minimal bloom. It has very minimal recoil. It has a solid fire rate. It doesn't have the largest magazine size, but it reloads incredibly quick, which is a decent trade-off. The accuracy is incredible. I think I already said that. Whether you're ADS or hipfire, the accuracy is really good. And it also is suppressed, which, has a nice little benefit. I'm not going to take a weapon over another strictly because it's suppressed, but the Ranger pistol is already so good in so many different ways that being suppressed on top of that is a nice bonus. And so those are going to be your 2 weapons. If you're just going to be using 2 guns, I think your choice of shotgun and the Ranger pistol, since it is incredibly versatile and incredibly good. For your next slot, I think you're definitely going to want to have overdrive grenades. These, I think, are the best mobility item this season. They're really good for pushing enemies. They're really good for resetting fights. They give you the overdrive effect afterwards, which will give you unlimited stamina and a bit of like a floatier jump, which is really good when you're pushing enemies. And they're somewhat plentiful on this map. I feel like, you know, typically they're not super impossible to get. But with this season, it feels like the range of audio was nerfed hard. I know visual audio was nerfed, but just audio in general feels much worse this season. And I feel like that's like a buff to the overdrive grenades. I feel like in a lot of instances, you can overdrive on people and they might not hear you coming at all. And that makes them a good mobility item. Like it's a shockwave style mobility item that also gives you unlimited stamina. It's just been good ever since it was added, and this season is no different. And I feel like comparatively it got better this season just because we have way less mobility in the loot pool. For heals, you're probably going to want a chug jug or big pots, but fish are the best healing item in the loot pool right now. If you're able to get slurp fish or shield fish, they heal incredibly fast. And fish have always been good in Fortnite ever since they were added. But this season, I think fish are particularly effective because there's not as many fast heals in the loot pool this season. Like last season, we had pizza, for example. But also, it's very easy to fish this season because a lot of the POIs or areas around the POIs do have fishing spots. And the Chaos Exploder AR can actually be used to fish these spots. So if I'm landing at an area that has fishing spots, I always try to like keep my eye out for a Chaos Exploder AR. That way I can quickly fish all those spots and, you know, get the fastest and best healing item in the game, the shield fish or the slurp fish. And another advantage of this is not only like fast heals are always good in a fight and it's like a nice advantage to have, but since it's somewhat uncommon to get, you will have a HP, like you have a timing advantage on most other people that you fight since most people aren't carrying fish. Also, when fishing, you have a chance to get the Midas Flopper, which can turn all your weapons gold, which again, off spawn is a nice bonus. I've talked about this in a previous video and people commented that the Midas Flopper is broken. I think it maybe was at the start of the season, or maybe there's just a chance for it to be broken. I'm not sure. I'll have a clip on screen now of me using it. But every time I've gotten it this season, and it's probably been like 5 or 6, 7 times, it's turned all my loot gold and worked perfectly for me. So I'm not sure what the problem was there, but I assume it has been fixed, or I just haven't run into it. But you have a chance to get the Midas Flopper from fishing these spots. You have a chance to get, you know, shield fish or slurp fish, the better healing items in the loot pool. And the Chaos Exploder AR is really common and really easy to get. So for that reason, if I'm at an area with fishing spots, I keep my eye out for a Chaos Exploder and we can quickly fish all those slots and, you know, maybe get a Midas Flopper, get some of the best heals in the game. It's a nice benefit to have, especially I know a lot of people have been complaining about third parties this season. Having that faster heal is going to help you a lot. One kind of downside of the fish is people will say, like, once you use it, you can't find more probably unless you're going to spend time fishing. That is true, but there's vending machines all around the map. So if I ever do use my fish and I don't get heals off somebody I eliminated, I'll just go to a vending machine at some point and then buy a chug jug for 1,000 gold. And that's super easy. The last slot is really going to be up to you in the setup. The boots can be a solid mobility item. They're more so for traveling the map than fighting, I think. Fighting with them is a bit weird because, you know, there's times where you want to crouch and you end up sliding. And then a lot of times when I have them and I want to slide, I don't slide. So the boots are one of the least enjoyable mobility items I've ever used in this game. I think balloons are probably only the only other mobility item I dislike more than this. The EMP grenades can be really good and really situationally OP if you have somebody sitting in a bush, if you have somebody driving a car, if you just catch timing on somebody, being able to chuck those EMPs at them, really good. The bunkers, the brick bunkers, you know, can definitely be solid, especially in team game modes. The Guardian Shield is incredibly good this season, and you kind of create a playstyle that most people aren't going to be used to dealing with since it is a somewhat unique item. Unfortunately, the EMP grenades don't disable the Guardian Shield. I fought somebody who had it the other day, and I had EMPs in my inventory, and I thought, okay, I'll just throw EMPs at them, and then their shield will be disabled. But it didn't work that way. So the Guardian Shield is really good, or you could just carry extra overdrives in this slot, and that's typically what I do. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that like I like having double mobility to have a movement and kind of pace advantage on most other players. And on a lot of seasons, that's like the shockwave style item, and then whatever the marquee mobility item is for that season. So like last season, it was like the 7 gloves and overdrives, right? I don't like using the boots that much, like I said, so I would rather just have 2 sets of overdrives if I find enough to make that work. So that is my preferred setup. You know, the striker pump, the ranger pistol, overdrive nades, fish, and then more overdrive nades. If you do want to run 3 guns, which I think is incredibly viable this season, basically it's going to be the same as the last setup but with an extra gun instead of that extra set of shockwaves overdrives, or like that, whatever that last slot was that we talked about, you would replace that with the third gun. And I think the best choices here are going to be the hunting rifle or the burst rifle. These are going to be the more kind of like range dominant weapons. And they're both pretty good. Overall, though, I think the hunting rifle and the ranger pistol are probably the two most busted items this season. If you have the hunting rifle, you can easily body people for like 100 damage. And if you hit a headshot, they're an insta-kill. And the penalty for throwing out a shot and missing is rarely that big of a deal because you could just peek and shoot and then go back into cover. Or if you're pushing them, you know, you could throw out a no-scope and, you know, if it hits, that's awesome and you get huge damage advantage on somebody. But if it doesn't hit, it's also not the end of the world. So I think the hunting rifle is, like I said, probably the best weapon in the loot pool right now. You know, if you are going to be using 3 guns and one of them is the AR, I feel like it does kind of free you up to use one of the less versatile spray weapons like the Stinger or Flex. Like if you wanted to run burst, then you could run like shotgun and Stinger SMG and then have more dominant like close range spray. But like still hunting rifle and Stinger SMG, it would work. But like those situations where somebody's just shockwaving away, I feel like they're going to have an easier time getting away. And those situations happen a lot in zero build. I wouldn't want to run 3 guns to run something like the Chaos Exploder AR. I feel like it's been nerfed enough to at this point to where it's really not that dominant. And then same with the Warforged AR. It's like more of like a versatile do-it-all weapon than it is like a main ranged weapon. And I think if you're going to run a 3rd gun, it should probably be something to dominate at range more, like the hunting rifle or the burst rifle. If not one of those, you're probably better off just running double overdrives or whatever you wanted to run in that last slot. But as I kind of already said in this video, the main kind of weapons you want to be, you know, concerned with is whatever shotgun you prefer. And then the next highest tier items, I think, are the hunting rifle and the ranger pistol. Both of them are incredibly good, and being good with those weapons and being like used to those weapons is going to be a huge advantage this season. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, one final thing, like I talked about that 3rd setup with an extra gun. I kind of prefer to use the double mobility. If you're good with the hunting, it's probably best to, you know, use the hunting. But a lot of times I end up using the 3-gun setup until I'm just able to find an additional set of overdrives. If I don't find 2 sets from looting my initial POI, then I'll run a 3rd gun for the time being, but I'll usually swap it out once I get that 2nd set of overdrives. But now that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.